Mic is on, yay. So today is Mental Health Sunday at Plymouth, and this is in anticipation of World Mental Health Sunday on Thursday, October 10th. And so we wanted to do something to honor that day. And our guest is Ellison. She's the co-chair of the board of Mental Health Connect, and Plymouth is a recent partner of Mental Health Connect. And she's had a 40-year career in healthcare, most recently as director of Interfaith Health and Community Outreach at Fairview. Her career was entirely at Fairview, which is amazing. Anne is passionate about the role of faith communities in health and well-being, and you'll quickly discover that for yourself. It's been really fun talking to her, so enjoy. Thanks, Anne.
Well, I would just say thank you, for having Mental Health Sunday. Not all congregations do that, and for allowing me to be here. It's a pleasure. It's been fun talking to Rebecca. I am a retiree of Fairview Health Services as a medical social worker. That's my background, and spent about half of my career at the bedside in various settings across the Fairview system, and the second half of my career doing community outreach and education. So doing forums like this on topics like mental health or advanced care planning and end-of-life work or trauma, so I'm used to being out and about, which is lovely. So it is a privilege to be here. I'm going to start us off just with a little bit of open discussion, if you're able. I did a little creeping on the website, so I know some of the answers to a few of these questions. But tell me a little bit about what you think is the most, maybe I'll frame the question, what do you think is the most unique thing about Plymouth? Social justice, okay. Community.
Progressive theology.
Ooh, progressive theology, okay. Inclusivity. How?
Focus on the arts.
That was very clear on the website, was the focus on the arts, yes. How many worshipers do you have on a Sunday in general, do you think? A couple hundred? Couple hundred? Okay. Okay. Cool. What would you describe as the biggest issue around mental health and well-being that you've seen either in this community or in the surrounding community? Stereotypes. Stigma. Mm-hmm. Say that again? Anxiety. Okay. Ooh, and it's a hard world to be in these days. What do you see? Probably mostly the issues that you might see.
I think depression.
Depression. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Stress.
Mm-hmm.
Lack of visibility.
Lack of visibility? Okay. Good morning. And they often go hand in hand, don't they? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm hoping that the answer to your second question about how we deal with them can be enhanced in a relationship with Mental Health Connect. That's why we're here, is to better equip and build the capacity of the faith community, its faith leaders and clergy, as well as members, to be able to walk alongside and support those who have mental health struggles. That's really what Mental Health Connect is about. So thank you for that input. Why do we focus on this? Here's what we know. That in a typical faith-based organization, 1 in 4 people is affected by mental illness, same as in the general population, right? So this is a little bit of I think we have one extra slide in here. But over 60% of people experiencing mental health concerns or who have loved ones experiencing mental health concerns say that they will go to pastors or faith leaders first. That tells me a couple of things. That regardless of history and all that people may have experienced, a faith community is still a safe and trusted place for 60% of the population. But 56% of pastors believe that it is their role and that local faith communities have a role in supporting individuals, right? But only 49% of pastors say they rarely or never speak, and I thank you for speaking today from the pulpit. It makes a difference. 49% of pastors say they rarely or never speak to their faith community about mental health. We're trying to change that. 35% of Americans say mental illness could be overcome by Bible study and prayer. 35% of people believe that. Clearly, there's a role for faith-based organizations, churches, in helping to reduce stigma, increase access, find resources, all of those things. That's what Mental Health Connect is all about. All right. Oh, see, I'm out of order here. Okay, you've probably already read this. An estimated 26% of Americans ages 18 and older, 1 in 4 people. It's all of us. It is all of us. And nearly half will experience a mental health illness or crisis in their lifetime. All right, I'm going to keep going. We did that one. So let me tell you a little bit about this piece, which is literally hot off the presses. Our board has been working for about the last 6 months to revamp and make sure our mission, vision, values are relevant to the work that we're doing today. So this is literally the first time I think this has been made public outside of the folks within Mental Health Connect. And this is our mission. As a collaborative of faith communities, and as of today, I believe that we are at 38 faith communities in the Mental Health Connect Collaborative. And I can give you a little bit of a history of how that built. But Mental Health Connect builds capacity by providing support and education to reduce stigma. That's a big part of what we do. And improve access to mental health services. That's our mission. Our values, and we worked a long time to make sure that we had values that were specific to the work that we do. We believe mental health is health, and everyone deserves health care. No exceptions. Each person is worthy of dignity, respect, and love. Working at that intersection of faith and mental health. That intersection of faith and mental health. We value inclusion, collaboration, hope, and support. We take those words very seriously and wanted to make sure that we had those in everything that we moved forward with. Our vision, and this is simple, our vision, faith communities with no mental health stigma. That's an easy one to remember. It's an easy one to put into your elevator speech when somebody says, "Oh, what is mental health?" Well, here we are. These are the things that are important to us, so important that we made sure that we have them in our mission, vision, and values. Okay? So, Mental Health Connect is a collaboration, and actually, as of Friday, it's 38 faith communities that exist to support faith community leaders, because we know that there's a role that the faith leaders play in terms of how that trickles down to the members and their members through reducing stigma. And the primary way that we do that is through education, and we'll talk a bit more about that. Getting individuals to the right resources at the right time, and we call that navigation, and we'll talk about that. And then providing opportunities for collaboration among the member faith communities, and we're getting there on that. Think about it. I know Beacon was key here, right? It started in this community as a collaboration of faith communities. When I think about what Beacon's doing now as a model, I think about what Mental Health Connect could be doing in 5 years, and how we can build the power of the collaboration, given that we're now at 38 faith communities and the impact of that. I'm going to take those apart a little bit. Education, You have ambassadors here. Are any of your faith community ambassadors in the room? Thank you. Great. Cool. So all member faith communities have at least 2 mental health Connect ambassadors. That's the role of how do the staff and leadership of Mental Health Connect stay involved and connected to the work that's happening in the churches. How do we bridge? And then the ambassadors play that role for us. There are monthly ambassador meetings, and each month has a topic, an education session, that we hope those ambassadors bring back to your community. So that's the back and forth role that those ambassadors play. Mental Health Connect staff and volunteers like myself will come out on a Mental Health Sunday or during May is Mental Health Month, or any time that it is convenient. We have folks on our team, both paid and volunteers, who will table at an event, who will come out and speak, who will do any of those things that make it more visible in your community. We have programs within Mental Health Connect that you can access. We talked about the ambassadors. There is a full orientation that ambassadors have with us to make sure that they understand their role and we understand their needs back and forth. That's one piece. We have a faith community engagement session. We call it, what does your ministry look like? Because we know that being out in the community, there are things that are going on in our faith communities, but they may not call it a mental health ministry. They call it a coffee group or a book club or a whatever it might be, but it talks about social connection, isolation, reducing isolation. There's a lot of things that are going on in our faith communities, and they may not call it a mental health ministry, and that's okay. We want to support that activity no matter what. So we have a whole session that we do on how to build a mental health ministry. The Faith Community Leader Program, we have started in 2020, end of 2023, beginning of 2024, at least quarterly invitations to all of the clergy of the 38 member faith communities so that they get an opportunity to sit with one another and talk about and learn from each other in terms of what they're seeing, how they're addressing it, what their ministries look like, how can we share information, and what education can they receive that's going to help them in their ministry around mental health. So those are happening on a quarterly basis, and I think they're getting a little larger each time we hold them, which is good, and we're getting a lot more exchange across the table from faith leaders sharing information and resources. It's lovely to see. And then the last one that you see on that list, that HOPE training. Gail didn't add that one. Okay, there's a final bubble in this session that's called HOPE training, HOPE, and it's a training that I do as a certified trainer that speaks to healthy outcomes from positive experiences. I would imagine that many of you know about ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. The science of hope, in a really short snapshot, is that a pediatrician researcher did a study similar to the ACEs study, but he added questions about positive experiences that youth experience in their homes between 0 and 18. And then looked at all of the data, over 6,000 surveys, and found a specific set of positive experiences that actually mitigate the impact of trauma and ACEs as children grow up. And I can tell you a whole lot more about that. It's wonderful science, and it's things that make sense. It's not rocket science, but there is science behind the positive things that we can all do to support our children and reduce the impact of trauma and ACEs. So I can tell you more about that. But it's one of those education sessions that we can make available to any of our member faith communities. So know that. So again, as we look to education, why is it important? The complexity of mental health. Oh, we've gotten it. Boy, I apologize. These are way out of order. Okay, here we go. I'm going to talk a little bit about navigation, because that's really a component of the program that is important, because we all know how complex the mental health system is in our communities. No matter whether if you have health insurance, if you don't, if you're homeless, if you have a home, it doesn't matter. It's complex for everyone. And we have a function that is called navigation. And it's really about trying to reduce how overwhelming it can be to try and find the right resources for the help that is needed. I was just talking to Rebecca a bit. It's a phone line and a text line that is manned 5 days a week, and if you call on the weekend, they're right there on Mondays to follow up. What we're seeing is actually, the navigation line is underutilized. Our navigators, we've got 8 volunteer navigators. Many have either lived experience or professional experience with the mental health system, and they want to be busier. They know it's a complex system, and they know that they can help, and they, as I was saying, are like a dog with a bone. They aren't going to give up until they know that you have the resources that you called in about, and you have a connection. It is not a crisis line. They will refer you to the crisis line, but it is a resource finding, quote, navigation function that I think is vastly underutilized. They can make an individual, and what we're seeing is often it's family members looking for support and resources. You can make a phone call, you can make a text, you can send an email, anything. The numbers are all over our website and all over our information. We're trying to make it more accessible for folks to find the navigators. Follow-up happens. It's not just a referral and you're done. The navigators will follow up within days to a week after they've completed a referral for you. It's a walk alongside. It isn't just a hand out information. Collaboration, as we talk about, again, the potential power and influence of a 40-member, 38-member collaborative, I think is huge. And I think we've done a little bit, and we're learning how to do a bit more of pulling those collaborative members together and having a presence in our communities. What we are seeing is that if you have an event relative to mental health, whether it's Mental Health Sunday or a fundraiser or whatever it might be, we put those events on our website so that we can help cross-promote events. And for example, I will tell you, October 15th, which is coming up, we have an event at Alleluia Lutheran? Nope, Faith Lutheran, it's on our website, called Music Heals. And it is an event where there are musicians who are sharing their stories of their own and or their loved ones' struggle to find mental health, interspersed with lovely music. If you want to hear more or see more, you can look it up on the Mental Health Connect, mhcconnect.org. You'll find it under our events page. But we can cross-pollinate events so that we can promote what you're doing and you can promote what's happening in the other member faith communities. That's the power of collaboration. Let's see, what's next? You have, and if you don't, before you leave, this whole packet of slides is back there on the table. You can feel free to take it. But there's a document here, as you see on the slide, that talks specifically about the navigation function, why it's important, who they are, what the process looks like, and when is a good time to call a navigator. I would say take that with you, post it anywhere and everywhere on your campus, take it with you, carry it with you, just so that you have access to the help that folks need. Remembering it's not a crisis line. There are crisis lines out there. This is a navigation line, and I think that's a clear distinction. So when we talk about the benefits of membership, as I was explaining, from my perspective, and yes, I might be a little bit biased, but there's no downside to being a member of Mental Health Connect, okay? The benefits are access to all of the education and services that we have. That education helps us reduce stigma. That's what we're about. It's access to the navigation line. Now, we will ask when folks call if they have an affiliation with one of our member faith communities, because we track that. But if they don't, that's okay too. We're not going to turn anybody down because they're not a member congregation. So know that that's an available resource for you to hand out to others, even if they're not members of Plymouth. It's access to consultative services, so our executive director is available to pick up a phone and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing in my community, what do you have? Do you have a speaker on loneliness and isolation? Do you have a speaker on mental health outcomes for teens? All of those things. We're a resource for your community in that respect as well. And then it's really being partners and doing things collaboratively. The question, Rebecca asked the question earlier, how are we funded? Given the philanthropic environment these days, what's it like? How are you struggling? Where are you at? So Mental Health Connect has been in existence for 10 years. That's a good track record for a small program. Mental Health Connect started as a ministry of Bethlehem Lutheran Church on 41st and Lyndale in South Minneapolis. There was a Lutheran church that closed and sold its building and was looking for projects, programs to give seed money to. That's how Mental Health Connect started. It started with, I believe, a $30,000 grant from the Epiphany Fund that helped us build a program. And we stayed at about 5 or 6 or 7 member congregations for the first several years. And interestingly enough, during COVID, we shot from about 7 or 8 faith communities to 20 to 30 because people were looking for ways to connect, in my opinion. And again, we're now at 38. And I know this because what I'm doing in addition to being the board is I'm also doing some fund development work for the program right now. And I know this because I looked at the dollars. About 60% of our revenue, our income that supports the program, comes from our member faith communities. We call it an investment. So it can look like a small grant out of your operating funds. It can look like a Mental Health Sunday where you take up a collection and all those dollars come to Mental Health Connect. It can look like a concert that you do as a fundraiser for Mental Health Connect. It doesn't have to cost the congregation a lot of money, but any money that is raised on behalf of the program helps support the running of the program. So about 60% of our revenue comes there. We have about 20% that comes from individual donors, those that we've cultivated over the last 10 years who are passionate about supporting the faith communities and their need to address mental health. And the last 10 to 20% comes out of grant writing and work that we're doing. And it's fortunate that funders are starting to recognize 2 things. One, the need for the mental health, to address mental health and well-being in our communities. They're clearly recognizing that. But they're also starting to recognize the value of the faith community in doing that, as trusted spaces where folks come when they have a crisis. There is a role for our faith communities. There is a role, what other institution in our community has a relationship with folks from birth to death? Why not our faith communities? What other organizations allow people to gather on a regular basis and talk together? Faith communities have a role in addressing the mental health issues in our community and a whole lot of other health issues, in my opinion. That's why I've been working at that intersection of faith and health for a long time. And I'm passionate about the fact that our faith communities have a unique role to address the mental health needs in our communities. So there really isn't a downside to being a member of Mental Health Connect. It's all about access and stigma. The final slide that I have is simply a list of the faith communities that are members of Mental Health Connect. And again, you can take that list with you. Know that if you're familiar with any of these churches, they're also in partnership with us. We've segmented them by geography. There's a fair number in Minneapolis and South Minneapolis. If you're in relationship with other faith communities for work, you can start to talk about, okay, so we're a part of Mental Health Connect, you're a part of Mental Health Connect. Let's think about what we could potentially do together. That's the beauty of the collaboration, right? Okay, I went through that fairly quickly. What are your thoughts? Questions? Comments? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. So when you're providing resources to people, how far beyond the Twin Cities do those resources extend? And the reason I ask the question is that I know and love somebody who lives about an hour away from the Twin Cities, and if that person needed care and I called, I'd be able to get resources in that person's area?
I can tell you this. The navigators that we have, if they don't know the area that you're looking for, they will find it. They will dig. We've had parents calling from California asking for help for their child who lives in Minnesota, and vice versa. They are, because they're so dedicated, number one, and because they have the level of experience that many of them do, they are willing to dig. And they're willing to call, and they're willing to find the right resource, whether it's a different county here in Minnesota. And as I've said, they've done, I would say maybe a handful of calls they've fielded from places around the country. So they'll dig, and they'll find what they need. Yes?
Thank you, Anne, for being here. My question is, can you share examples of what some of the other faith communities are doing, have done, that maybe are unique as Plymouth continues to figure out what are some ways that we can really be present with
Sure.
mental health support?
Sure. You gave the example of the Music Heals event that is happening later this month. St. Joan of Arc has a which is a Catholic church in South Minneapolis, has a pretty robust mental health ministry. They held a concert for us as a fundraiser, had a silent auction, had the whole concert. It was lovely, raised funds. Trying to think of some of the other examples. When Mount Olivet Lutheran in South Minneapolis held a series around loneliness and isolation, they gave us the information, we posted it on our website, and we invited the whole collaborative to attend. So it can look like a lot of different things, and we are very open to unique opportunities. We have a faith community that helped us do a fundraiser at Culver's. The Fridley Culver's will donate $1 for every concrete mixer they sell over a weekend, right? Well, the faith community that we're partnered with up there, you sometimes have to staff. You have to be the greeters and the carry the order out to the table. They did that for us. They raised $836. Can you imagine 836 concrete mixers in a weekend they sold? Poof. But it can look like a lot of different things that we can do together in partnership. Whether it's sharing information, sharing education topics. If you know a speaker and we know somebody's looking for a speaker, that kind of collaborative work. It can be fundraising support. It can look like a lot of different things. We are wide open. I think that's the beauty of being as nimble as we can be, and as dare I say, small staff as we are. We have a full-time executive director in Hannah Campbell Gustafson. I am working about 10 to 12 hours a week. We have an outreach coordinator that works 5 to 10 hours a week. And we have a lead paid navigator who works 5 to 10 hours a week. And a 5-hour-a-week, maybe, graphic design person who makes everything look good. That's our staff. That's it. So we have a lot of flexibility in what we can do, and we are willing to entertain whatever ideas you might have. Hi, Jean.
Thank you, Anne. I think we've all experienced and are well aware of how difficult it is to navigate the healthcare system. I'm wondering how your folks vet providers, because there are really good ones and there are some who might not be so good. So how do you stay on top of that, given this very complex environment we're in?
Yeah. I think having liaisons to our health systems helps. As I mentioned, one of our board members is the VP of Addiction and Mental Health Services at Ellison. If we need somebody who's got an insurance that Ellison takes, he will help navigate that system. I served in that function when I was at the Fairview system. Having those connections to the big systems helps. But we also are, I wouldn't say partnered, but we're in relationship with some smaller counseling services that give us access as well. And again, that's because they don't get overwhelmed. We don't have a huge volume that they anticipate, but they'll take a referral here and a referral there, or a referral for a specialist. One of our newest board members is, I think she's at executive level at Melrose, the eating disorder program. So it's partly just having relationship with all of the various, as many as we are aware of, partners out in the community that we can trust and that we know that we can refer folks to. It's about the relationships. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just wondering, so I'm a parent and we have a lot of youth at this church. We know that mental health affects youth as well. I'm wondering if your navigation services include youth, or if there's any type of like specialty that some of your navigators might have around services for youth.
We have a couple navigators who have some experience both clinically as professionals and as parents that have intersected with the mental health system. So yes, we have that in their experience. We are aware that we need to build our capacity around youth and mental health. That's part of the HOPE presentation, is how can we help our youth? And I'm happy to talk about that one further and come back and do that if you'd like me to. And in fact, we're writing a grant to build a program out for all of our member faith communities around that science of hope and positive. So you might hear more about that. But we are aware that it is an area that we need to expand our knowledge base and our resource base. And we are doing it on a case-by-case basis so that our repertoire is growing. But it has not been an area that we've had focus, I would say, more than for the last 6 or 8 months. It's growing, in all honesty. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm wondering if that place, I'm wondering if they can help people who have disability, who been bullied at work or at home.
If I heard you correctly, you're talking about building, how do we build capacity in our workplaces and in our neighborhoods and education? Education? Yeah. I would say we're focused on the faith communities right now, but word of mouth does a lot of good in spreading messaging around in our communities. So it's not the best answer to your question, but I think the more we educate, the better.
Her question was about with people with disabilities. Did you catch that part?
In all honesty, it's probably not our strong suit, but if there were disability issues that come up in a navigation call, they'll dig and they'll find. I have total confidence in our navigators to look for resources, and much like the access for youth and teens, I think our access and understanding of the impact of mental health and disabilities and how those intersect is also growing. It's also growing. Thank you for the clarification.
I just wanted to share with you all that there are pamphlets and some little tactile pieces on the table back there for kids, and stickers. And us, yes. So feel free to take as much as you want.
Absolutely. absolutely.
And some really helpful brochures. There's lots of information.
There's a small folded document that we call it our pocket guide. And inside it just has resources and ideas for your own like calming. And we had a gentleman who called us recently and said, I was at one of your events and I took one of those pocket guides and I was in a bad place. I was really struggling, but I took it with me and I got it home and I read through it all and I went, oh, these are things that I can do for my own mental well-being. And I did them, and I went out and I went into nature and I did my breathing, and I am in a much better place. Simple little document. Keep it in your pocket, keep it in your purse, whatever. It's just a good reminder that we all can do things for ourselves and our own mental health well-being.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm so impressed. I didn't know anything about Mental Health Connect, and you've done a great job. I'm very impressed with the collaborative membership, the variety, and 1 out of 4 people, et cetera, that,
Thank you.
that has this need. So you need to get the word out to as many people, as many congregations as you can. I'm sure you're doing that. I'm wondering, I don't see 2 of our close friend churches, Hennepin Methodist and also Westminster. I don't see them on the list. I've got friends in both. Is a good way to go to have them contact you? Or
Absolutely. And Hannah, our executive director, will field any calls, any contacts. She'll go out, she'll speak to clergy, she'll preach in a faith community. Whatever we can do to make it appealing to them to join the collaborative, we would welcome the opportunity. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Are they involved, or are they, is there outreach?
I would characterize it as they are partners, but may not be members. They have such a robust mental health ministry across the temples that they don't, quote, need us to enhance their ministry, so they haven't become members, but we are present at their conference and their sessions and very much aware of what each other are doing, definitely. And I would say, in all honesty, what you see on this list is an awful lot of white churches. And what we see in our board membership is an awful lot of white folks, and we know that that is an area that we need to address. We need to focus on some of the work that's being done by our colleagues in the African American churches, and they are doing great work. But we know that we need to diversify our work as well. So we're looking for opportunities to do that. Yes, sir.
We can tell from the list that you have at least 2 UCC churches on there, so probably you guys are okay.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you. We're working on it.
Any other questions?
So you have your, 2 questions actually. So the Muslims, what are they, I can't remember what
Mosques.
Mosques. So churches would not exclude mosques?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Because sometimes when you say churches, people don't feel included. And then the other thing is, I've been to your breakfasts that you have annually.
Our annual fundraiser.
I always find them inspiring and educational. And there's a fundraiser too, but you didn't mention them as a significant factor in your fundraising, so maybe not so much.
It is the largest fundraiser that we do. We do a breakfast, usually the 2nd Tuesday or Thursday of the month of May. It's in and out 8 to 9 o'clock. But we do really work hard to get some really significant stories and speakers at that event, and it is our largest fundraiser. I believe last year we raised between $30,000 and $40,000 that morning. So it is our largest fundraiser. You're all welcome. It is. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I appreciate you taking the time and listening.
Thanks, Anne, very much. And also, I want to thank Slats for the expert technical work, as always. And I hope you can join us next Sunday. We'll have a speaker that's also an author, Jeremy Norton. He's a first responder. He wrote a book called Trauma Sponges, Dispatches from the Sacred Heart of Emergency Response. And so he will talk about his experience and in Minneapolis, and especially post George Floyd's death. I think it'll be, and incidentally, I think it's fascinating. He also has he has a degree in creative writing, so that will, I expect that he's a great author as well as storyteller. Thanks.